Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Berlinale Talent Campus 2009 with a brand new cinematography masterclass featuring today Janusz Kaminski. A warm welcome. A warm welcome to today's moderator, film historian, author, and since 1963 editor of the International Film Guide, Peter Cowie.
I'm Peter. No, I'm Janusz. Hello.
Well, we've had many exceptional cinematographers at the campus over the years, but none who is quite so innovative, I think, as Janusz Kaminski. He emigrated from his native Poland almost 3 decades ago, and he came in the early 90s to the notice of Steven Spielberg, who saw his very special talent, and together they produced Schindler's List, which in 1993 won Janusz the first of his Oscars, and in 1998, for Saving Private Ryan, with those extraordinary images of the Normandy landings in World War II, he won a second Oscar, and has become Spielberg's cameraman of choice, which means that he's worked on films as diverse as Amistad, Munich, Artificial Intelligence, Minority Report, even the most recent Indiana Jones movie. But he also won a very significant prize 3 years ago at the Cannes Film Festival for his work on the butterfly and the diving bell and the butterfly, Julian Schnabel's film. And today he's brought along, during the talk, he's actually brought along some dailies from that film, which he'll be able to talk through with us, and we have some other extracts. So it's going to be a very exciting afternoon, I think. Welcome,
Hopefully.
Janusz.
Hello.
Janusz, the theme of this year's Talent Campus is turning points, and was there a turning point in your career, or were you already, as a teenager, bent on becoming a cinematographer?
Well, I mean, of course, I've always loved the movies, and for me, movies meant freedom, simply because I grew up in Eastern Europe, I grew up in Poland, and we didn't really have the freedom to travel and experience the world just like the rest of the world. So for us, movies were the window to the world. So from very early age, I loved movies. From very early age, I was exposed to, I would say, the best world cinema, the best movies of the 70s made in America, the best German movies, Swedish movies, Brazilian movies. It was a very exciting time in movie history. And of course, I was very much impressed and stimulated to go to America because of American movies. So in 1980, I left Poland in 1980, and I went to Vienna. In Vienna, I asked for political asylum, and in 81, I landed in Chicago. And loving movies and knowing that there's a really strong history and tolerance among filmmakers for people from other countries, I was a little bit less intimidated by going towards that industry. And I was almost certain I would be accepted, simply because there were other Eastern European filmmakers working in Hollywood at that point. There was Milos Forman, Ivan Passer, Polanski, of course, and other people. So I've always felt that movie industry is one of the most tolerant industry in the world. And of course, I was not disappointed. So I went to film school in Chicago, wanting to direct just like anyone else wants to direct, because there's no other profession, but there's a producer with a cigar, there's a director calling action and a cut, and there's a star who's got a trailer. And of course, during very first year, I've had a chance to go behind the camera and do little 100 feet, which is what, 30 meters long little film. And one of the instructors, who was actually a screenwriter teacher, he looked at the little film and he said, "Hey, you're good at it, keep on going at it." And I think that was the turning point where I really decided to be cinematographer and focus on that aspect of filmmaking. But again, the story has a point. I think that the power of positive reinforcement is extremely important, especially for me, who again grew up in a different environment where that kind of ideology did not exist. So for the first time at age 22, I was told I was good at something, and so I took it to another level and blossomed with it. So do not dismiss the power of encouragement because it's essential.
Was
Whether
that
it's
a
from parents or whether it's from instructors, whether it's from a role model.
Was that at Columbia College in Chicago?
There was a Columbia College in Chicago, yes.
And then you went to the American Film Institute, right?
Then I finished the school in '87, and I was extremely intimidated by Hollywood. I didn't know anybody in Hollywood. It's a horrible place if you don't have a job, or if you don't know anybody. It's a great place when you're working. It's all about work there, right? So I decided to apply to the American Film Institute, and I got accepted as a cinematography fellow in 1987. And pretty much after graduating from AFI, I became working cinematographer, which means I could actually make a little bit money shooting movies.
TV too?
Television, yeah, not strictly television. I would shoot not cable television. I wouldn't do network because that was at that point was a little bit. I would take the job, but didn't have nobody offered that to me. I shot cable for cable television. I shot a couple of movies.
Wow. And how did you meet Steven Spielberg?
I was sitting one day on the streets of Krakow and he found me. That's one of the stories, right? The reality is I shot a movie. By the time I met Steven in '92, I already shot 4 or 5 features, low-budget features. I've done other work for Roger Corman's company. Roger Corman was, at that point, still the king of B-movies. But the picture that he's seen was a television movie directed by Diane Keaton called Wildflower, which was a nice, simple little story that took place during the recession in America of 1930s, and not the 2007 recession, 1930s. And he really liked the work. He liked the work, he liked the storytelling that I was providing the picture with. We took a meeting and we started working with each other.
And at what point was the decision made to film Schindler's List in black and white?
Well, that was definitely Steven's decision, and I came to that picture after the decision was made. He felt that this picture had to be made in black and white simply because our knowledge of that period comes from black and white photography. And he felt it would be just wrong to make it in color.
I remember in the last black and white film of a studio in the 60s was In Cold Blood. And everybody said, well, the labs will never make another black and white film. So in 1992-3, was it difficult to find a lab that would really do good work on
No.
on the black
I
and
mean,
white?
we tend to really draw conclusions really fast. There's a death of motion picture. Everything's going to be shot digitally. Well, not really. There's 3D is the new future. Everybody will be doing 3D. We see how that goes. But no, it's really easy. I mean, the labs are still knowledgeable. There's still technology. There are still people who do black and white, The problem is you have to allocate the entire production line at the lab just for the black and white picture. But once you're making a movie, there's a separate printing machine, separate chemical bath that allows you to still print black and white. So, and there's always India. They do black and white.
Well, I think we should see an extract from Schindler's List, which of course really made you an overnight star. Can we have the first?
Starlet. I was a starlet, long blonde hair.
First thing. How long does a sequence like that take to light and do? I mean, how many days were you on that?
Well, I think you really have to move fast when you're making movies in Hollywood, especially with Steven. I mean, you get all the equipment, all the help, all the crew, but you just gotta move really fast because there's economical reason. You don't want to stay on the set too long. You don't want to spend too many days because every day costs you a few $100,000. But also the energy. It's very important to have energy and momentum when you're making movies because it's very hard to take one and then 15 minutes later you do take 2 and take 3, and it's just such a boring process. So the faster you move, the more instinctually you work, the better for the actors it is. It's just you have the momentum. Mm-hmm. But that particular scene, I think, was shot in one night. There was an additional scene that we photographed on that night that never ended up being in the movie. And the preparation probably took several weeks, You have to understand that we couldn't really shoot inside Auschwitz because we felt this was totally inappropriate. So we built our own camp on the other side, on the public side of the Auschwitz. So when the train is pulling supposedly into Auschwitz, it's actually in reality pulling out of Auschwitz into our own set that we've built. So it took several weeks to light it, and stuff like that. But only one night to shoot.
So it was, the whole film was shot in Poland, wasn't it?
The whole picture was shot in Poland, yes. Yeah.
And how much on location within Poland, away from the studios?
Well, primarily 90% of the picture was shot on location, simply because, the reason we went to Poland is to be in the historically accurate environment. So, for example, Oskar Schindler's apartment in Krakow was the actual apartment in Krakow. Some of the other locations were also authentic locations. We did build the Plaszów sub-camp where Amon Gerd resides. That was a build. But really, primarily was shot on location.
There's a scene later in the film where, of course, you see the little girl in the red coat.
Right.
And I think the only precedent for that is in Kurosawa's High and Low, where there's this little puff of pink smoke coming out of a window. It's a widescreen film made in the 60s. But it had an extraordinary impact. It met with mixed reviews, I think, from some of the critics, but I think the public were very impressed by it, that sudden shock of the color.
The critics, they're not called prizers, they're
right.
called critics.
But was that done in post-production?
That was done, you have to understand, as you know, the picture was based on the original book written by Connelly, yeah. And that little element was included in the book. So Steven simply just took that picture from the book and included in the movie. Yeah. So yes, we had to shoot on black and white. We shot on color, and then at that point, this is 1993. Each frame was rotoscope. Rotoscope, if you know what that means, it's an animation technique where each frame gets separated and all that stuff. Now you could do it very easily digitally. That's the one good thing about digital.
And Spielberg is a director who prefers 1:185 on the whole, doesn't he?
Yes, this was shot 185 simply because any other aspect ratio, and we're talking about big screen or regular movie screen, big screen being 235 aspect ratio, which is the anamorphic or super 35, or this one being 185, which is the standard aspect ratio to view motion picture. He feels that smaller movies like this, not even smaller movies, large screen would really somehow bring too much pathos into the movie, which is already very emotional.
You also get more information at top and bottom, don't you?
You get a little bit more information, yeah. So when you do dinosaurs, you want to do 185.
And also better for television sales.
Right. Well, with television now, you just reduce. You go pen and scan for television. So.
And when that film came out and the Oscar came about, were you inundated with offers from other directors?
I suppose, yeah, but I really wanted to work with Steven, and I did a really silly movie, not directed by him, but produced by him, a little movie for children called Little Giants, and kids seem to know the movie, especially little girls.
And Jurassic Park had been made just before, wasn't it?
Jurassic
Because
Park
both came
1,
out in 93.
Yeah, Jurassic Park 1 was made in 92, I think.
But it was released in early 93,
Right, I remember
think.
we were filming Schindler's List, and Steven was doing special effects supervision for Jurassic Park, yeah.
So he works at a high speed. You have to do
there are
film a year.
There are people who are slackers who somehow become famous, and he's definitely not a slacker. He's one of the hardest people working in the world. He deserves all the fame that he got because he lives and breathes, and for him, movies are essence. He loves making movies. He prepares one picture and works on another movie. He's producing several pictures. He's running a studio. So he's one of the unique people who really found the professional calling in life.
And between Schindler's List and The Lost World, Jurassic Park 2, you worked with Cameron Crowe on Jerry Maguire. Was that a different style altogether of direction?
Yeah, I think I did Jerry Maguire in 95, I think, so it was a little bit later. But nevertheless, definitely different style. Cameron Crowe made little independent pictures prior to Jerry Maguire. He was very much focused on the dialogue and performance, so he didn't really develop the visual style yet. So somehow we work on that a little bit, and he.
That gives you more freedom as a cinematographer when the director is a little hesitant.
Yeah, and then of course we can talk about the word freedom from the director, because I'm totally opposing that and it's frequently used word freedom from a director to do my work. I'm equal to the director. I'm a director of photography. I tell the story. I work in nonverbal language, and I really don't need the freedom from the director to do my job, you know. But it is a collaboration, of course, and it's nice to collaborate with directors who are visually sophisticated, and it's okay to collaborate with directors who are not as interested in visuals, you know. At the end, there isn't really one I prefer. I like good story, and that's what I'm attracted to, you know. Yeah.
And the advantage of working over so many years with someone like Spielberg is that you arrive at a point where, like Sven Nykvist and Ingmar Bergman, you don't need much communication. You just instinctively know what the other wants, probably.
But I think that was the beginning of from the beginning, the relationship was like that. I mean, I don't like to go and talk about and break everything apart and do the European style of, you know, over-analyzing the story, because at the end, you still have to do it in 12 hours, and all the concepts you're talking about very frequently are irrelevant to the actual production day. So I like to work with someone who is confident in my work, who likes my storytelling, and I like to work with someone who does the same thing as a director, you know. So we may say, we don't want this movie to look like this one, but we don't really have a blueprint that says, let's make it like this, you know. Right. It's a good relationship. And some actors like to work like that. Some actors don't really want director to direct them. Some actors just want to say, some actors just prefer saying, just let's do another one without really correcting the actor. And others need very extensive character development and analysis and stuff like that. You know, just you know, some cinematographers may like to talk about it. You know, I don't.
At what point does Spielberg send you a screenplay, or in fact initially contact you about a project? Does he get your advice at an early stage?
It may be 3 to 4 months before the actual movie. I will read the script, and the movie may not even be financed by then yet, but you know, he knows he's going to make a movie. So, which is very good, because that gives me the comfort to start thinking about the picture. Yeah. And I find that to be necessary. I like the more time I've got to think about a movie, not necessarily to be actively involved in pre-production, but just think about a movie. And it's not like I sit down on a chair, drink and smoke and think about a movie. You know, I don't do that. But I know there's a movie I'm going to make, and all the world around me that I'm experiencing to some degree, I end up absorbing the world and using the elements from the world to apply to the movie. Of course, movie like Jurassic Park is irrelevant. You know, that I couldn't really absorb anything for that movie, which is a great movie, fun to do. But movie like, you know, Minority Report, what is the world going to look like in near future? You know, is it orange? Is it blue? Is it grainy? Is it slick? You know, is it going to look like Blade Runner? No, it's not going to look like that, because that was made. So you got to figure out what is this world, you know. And watching the life around you allows you to sometimes absorb from that and apply towards movies.
And having a good collaboration with the production designer.
Sure, that's essential, yeah. Simply because
Alex McDowell on Minority Report.
Because I'm photographing whatever is given to me by the production designer. And that collaboration is extremely important, and that collaboration has to start as soon as possible, so you're not surprised that the sets are built and you're not really able to light the sets, because there's just, you know, they build all the way to the perms. Perms are the last stage and the height of the stage. And if you have a set that goes all the way to the perm, how are you going to put a light there? You know, so that kind of stuff. Or you request windows a certain color, or how shiny the walls should be. What is the color of the furniture? Where is the window? How big is the window? What's the glass? You know, you can take it anywhere you want it. You know.
How early did you come up with this wonderful look for Saving Private Ryan? This sort of livid, slightly greenish quality.
Extensive. Before every movie, I do tests, which are kind of a visual representation of what I want this picture to look like. And then I present the picture to the director and production designer, and then we talk about it a little bit, you know. So with Saving Private Ryan, I've done the tests probably 2 to 3 months prior to the principal of photography, where actually I went on a backlight in the studio and had a whole bunch of people dressed in uniforms running around, you know, and I was doing little things with the camera, or with, at one point I've attached drill to the magazine, and you use the drill and the bit goes around and hits the, you know, oh, that's interesting. Looks like a machine gun. Because if you shake it, you know, your hand starts hurting. So you have a black eye because, you know, you press it and then the thing hits them. You know? And then I found out that there's an actual device that will simulate that kind of vibration. It's called lens shaker, and basically it's like a device you mount on the lens, in front of the lens. It's got water in it, and it's got some kind of a means of disturbing the water, and you have a dial you can dial to whatever, horizontal movement or perpendicular movement. So we had one of those, but then we frequently shot with 3 cameras. So one had that one, and then the other ones, we had black eyes, That's, And you play with the speed. You play what happens when you shoot at 3 frames and you print it to 24 frames. Or what happens when you have a little device that you go from 24 frames, you go to 12 frames. So in theory, you're making everything go fast, right? But if you go from 24 frames to 12 frames and then you step print each frame to go back to 24, so people don't go that fast, but they go a little bit smeared. How is that? What is that going to do to you? Or what if you do that as the camera is pushing towards Tom Hanks, and you will see that clip. The camera is pushing towards Tom Hanks, and you dial to slow speed, but then you print it up. What happens to the emotions? Because it's all about emotions. It's all about evoking emotions in the audience. It's not to razzle dazzle and with fun shot to do. It's just to make you feel a certain way about a picture, And you discover that it works, I mean, you as the filmmaker, you have to look at the tests and realize that this is working or this is not working. And if it's working, why is it working? And can you improve it and expand on it?
Right. Where did you shoot that beach sequence?
The beach sequence was photographed in the coast of Ireland, very close to Wexford. Simply because we couldn't shoot in Normandy again. Because it's just not appropriate to go there and photograph.
And how long did it take to get your dailies?
Oh, the dailies, we took 2.5 days to get the dailies because the dailies were printed in, I think we printed them Technical in London. Yeah, 2 days, yeah.
Right. Well, can we see a clip from this famous sequence from Saving Private Ryan, the landing on the beaches of Normandy?
I haven't seen this in a long time, so it still works.
There's so much in it. I mean, so much information coming at you. And really
what's the job of cinematographer? The first image that you've seen, besides creating the whole thingy, I'm sitting right on the edge of that landing craft with a Hudson sprayer, and I'm spraying the water right over the lens because it was not raining, but I wanted to create rain, And I knew that nobody else would be permitted to do that because the interference with the actors. So I had a Hudson sprayer, 2 Hudson sprayers, and just, there's the lens, and I'm right there, right just outside frame, just spraying the water, And, you can be involved with the movies to that extent. You can tell the art department what color walls they should be painted, or you walk on the set and just look at the set and just doesn't look real. And you talk to the production designer, you tell them, you have to make the walls wet. But if I make the walls wet, the whole paint will disappear. Well, get the people and paint them overnight. We're going to make the set wet, So.
How did you do the underwater sequences? Back in Hollywood, or?
No, that was, we did, I mean, some of the shots are actual water. We go
when he comes
right.
up out of the
But
way.
the stuff with the soldiers dying, we just simply dug a huge pit, put a visqueen, and we shot it. That's how we shot it. Of course, the bullets and the traces are CGI. So that's a really good example of the combination of all the elements that come to a scene being really good: the visuals, the performance, the camera, the sound design, the music, all that stuff, the production design. That just completely gives you the sense of how important the sound is, or how important the editing is. How important the camera is. You don't even see Tom Hanks until that one close-up, And that was very interesting because I saw the dailies before the director, and I'm looking at the dailies and I'm thinking, wow, there goes $20 million. We don't even see him, To trivialize it, but yet it felt very real, And I think at the end that's what you want. You want some sense of reality from the screen, from totally artificially manufactured image reality that you as the viewer respond to, or or evoke some kind of emotions.
But in the old days of the Hollywood studios, that kind of sequence would have been left to the second unit. That's how someone like Andrew Martin, got to direct the chariot race in Ben-Hur, and the cinematographer, in quotes, would probably not soil his hands with going out into the water and putting something over a lens. I think it's...
Yeah, yeah. But Steven, you know, he does everything a camera only, one camera. There's no second unit. You know, it's all done primarily by the main unit, except the Indiana Jones movies. We had a large second unit that would finish what we started. So, example, the scenes in the jungle, the car chase, we would do the primary thing, and then the second unit would finish with body doubles and stunt people. Yeah.
Okay. But here the impression is of dozens of cameras, not just three.
No, they're primary. I mean, if you look at once they land on the beach, it's really one camera because the camera just follows the actors, you know. So it's one camera. The landing was covered with 3 cameras only.
It's amazing. But the cutting creates the
editing,
impression
of course, and the sound effects and all that stuff.
But the Saving Private Ryan won you your second Oscar, and so were you able then to pick and choose? Cherry pick your projects.
Well, that's.
Well,
I mean, the Oscars are important because they validate you as a filmmaker, and they give you free hand to some degree to perform your job. You know, nobody really questions you. Nobody really challenges you, and whether that's good or bad. For me, I don't want to be challenged. I want my work to be liked. I don't really flourish under criticism. You know, and I like being told that I'm good. You know, that's. Yeah. You know, I make my own judgments in terms of whether it's really good or whether it's just bull, and I'm very much of a critical person to my work. You know, but I can also see when the work is good, and certainly there are movies that we won't talk about where I think the work was not very good, and this work here was really good.
Absolutely.
So the point was, the question was, wasn't it?
Don't worry, we'll go on to another one. Some of the later films with Spielberg, I'm thinking of Artificial Intelligence, Minority Report, War of the Worlds, are all very effects-driven as far as the public's concerned. Is that an inhibiting factor for you as a DP, that you know that a lot of the film is going to be created afterwards in post-production, and that when you're actually filming, oh well, there'll be a blue screen there and...
No, because you usually know what the effects are. You have to know. You have to know that there will be a monster coming from the ground. You know, simply because you have conceptual drawings, you have illustrations. You know what the thing is going to look like, and you know what the thing is going to do. And part of the cinematographer's job is to include that knowledge into pre-planning of the shot, and enhance that by interactive element. So, for example, when the monster comes from the ground and there's a swooping light across the crowd, that's my light. I put the light on the big crane, and I move the light. Yeah. If there's a scene where the monster crashes the car, we actually drop a piece of weight on the car and we destroy the car. You know, that kind of stuff. So you have to be very much aware of what the CGI work will be. And you know, it's very seldom these days it's just pure computer. I mean, what ILM does, they recreate a set, they do miniature set, and they actually photograph just like I would do, except it's a miniature. Yeah. So sometimes I get the chance to go to ILM and see the process. And again, we've done very few movies where the scenes were fully CGI. Usually it's where it's Minority Report, where it's primary enhancement or wire removal or creating a flame to the jetpacks, you know, or whether it's Saving Private Ryan where you have bullet tracers and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's always interactive CGI and supplementary CGI rather than fully CGI created pictures.
Munich must have been a challenge because you went to so many different locations, didn't you, throughout?
We actually didn't go to so many locations. We were supposed to, but the movie got pushed for 1 year and dollar tanked, and we lost $12 million. So we ended up going to Budapest, Malta, and Paris for half a week.
But not Munich itself.
Not Munich itself, no. So, for example, all the stuff that takes place supposedly in Italy was shot in Malta. A lot of the stuff that was supposed to be France was shot in Budapest, which actually looks like Paris. The main artery that goes through Budapest looks like Paris of the 70s. You know, it's slightly decayed because there's not enough money to renovate, but the scope of the streets and architecture is very similar.
And like all your films, it has a certain look where if you if you think the film Munich, you think of the darkness primarily, the evening scenes, the night scenes in the street, the rain-slicked streets, just as you think of this dark.
Because it's a thriller, you know. I mean, however you want to say it, it's still a political thriller. So there are certain elements within the genre that contribute to being a thriller. You make a film noir, you got shadows, you got dark, you got smoke, you got people coming in out of light. So we looked at it as a modern film noir thriller, you know, with bigger message, of course, but we treated it as for us, this is a primary film noir, kind of modern film noir. So you get the reflections, you get the rain, you get the shadows, you know, that kind of stuff, which is also part of the thriller.
You use a handheld camera very often, but you never to the point of so many modern films in this post-dogma era where the camera almost has to shudder the whole time. There was a film we saw here called Storm, where the camera is juggling from start to finish, and it detracts from what you're seeing on the screen because you know that the person who's watching would not always be moving like that.
So it's not the generation gap.
No, I don't think so. But maybe.
What do you guys think?
Anyone see Storm? No? Anyone agree that somehow it was? But at least it was mentioned in the Variety review that it was antsy.
Again, those are not prizers; they're critics.
Well,
whatever. I mean, if it's good for the story, it's good for the story, right?
Yeah.
And definitely, you know, what's that movie? Breaking Away is an amazing film.
Yeah.
And so is The Celebration, right? Create a new trend in the filmmaking, and really not a new filmmaker that would emerge from that trend.
But Godard, of course, had done that in Breathless.
Sure, it's all done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all done.
Yeah.
The
Nothing
quick editing
new.
hasn't been done, but it's all done.
So you've been kind enough to bring along some dailies from the...
I had stack of dailies that much, but we only chose 3 minutes.
But would you like to talk a little bit about Julian Schnabel and the Diving Bell and the Butterfly first?
Sure. I mean,
context.
It was an amazing script, amazing book. I've read the book. This is the genesis of the story. I was approached by Kathy Kennedy, who was a producer on Munich, with a script called Diving Bell and a Butterfly. And I read the script, and I really fell in love with the script because at the end, to me, the movie was a movie about life. It's affirmation of life. It's not a sad movie about guy who's paralyzed. To me, it's a story about men who became humanist. To some degree, just like Oskar Schindler. Is Schindler about Holocaust? Not really. What Schindler lists to me was about a guy who was motivated by greed. That's Oskar Schindler, who discovered humanity, who discovered the power of being able to save another life. So this movie, Diving Bell and the Butterfly, is about a guy who, you know, he lived very consumer-like life. You know, he was a editor of Elle magazine, and after the tragedy, he discovered a sensual world. He discovered the importance of light moving across the walls. He either discovered that or he had no choice. He's paralyzed at the end. But he started seeing the world around him. That was a very sensual world. And of course, the story is told from the first, from his point of view. So that permitted me to create this language that's very personal between the camera and the actors. So I read the script, and of course I liked it a lot. Then I met with Julian Schnabel because I wanted to make sure that, you know, we're going to make a movie that the audience can relate to, and not a abstract, impressionistic, or whatever his painting style is, piece of art, you know. And I met the guy, and he was very much interested in the language, and that was very reassuring to me that he would be a good guy to work with, because it's not just he interviews me, I interview him. You know, it's a process of mutual interest, you know. And we like each other, and we decided to make this movie, you know. And judging by response of the audience, we succeeded in making compelling and moving picture. It was a great experience. The whole movie was shot in France, which is has a different labor laws. You only work 8.5 hours, which is fantastic because in America you work 16 hours. And you have a great lunch, you know, have wine. And then you go home, you can see your family, and then you start the work again. So that's a very comfortable work environment.
Did you approach it scientifically? Did you talk to ophthalmic surgeons as to what sort of vision a man like that would have, or did you just literally imagine?
No, I started imagining what it must have been to see the world through one eye. So I kept on closing my eye with my hand and seeing, you know, the choices I have, you know. Right now I'm looking at that dot right there, but I'm seeing a little bit of her, and then I'm seeing your foot. So you can focus on that. You're talking, right? But I can, oh, you get a nice light. I love that little thing on your sock, you know, the golden thing, you know.
Yeah.
And you can, you know, that kind of stuff. So you realize things that normally I wouldn't pay attention to, you know. And playing with the sharpness, you know, what's sharp, what's not, and drifting in and out of conscious. What is that supposed to look like, you know? And again, you do tests, you know, and you see a little example of the photographic tests that I've done. It's like, you know, 1% of what I've really done. Due to time, I can't really bore you with 3 hours.
But we could, just before we take the lights down there, maybe you could just put the scene in context that you're going to describe.
So the first image, I'm playing with a very specific lens that allowed you to shift focus. You know, it's a wide-angle lens. It's called swing and shift lens. It's adapted from still photography. Not that I adapted it. It's invented by still photographers and then gradually employed through commercials in the movies, particularly through music videos. Music videos in the early 80s and 90s were extremely visually stimulating. So a lot of the techniques, like the skinny shutter, the playing with the different camera speeds and printing it and messing up the image, that is really inherited through or created to some degree or whatever, you know. We were introduced to those images in music videos, you know. There were some really great directors, you know. There was one Canadian girl, Fiona Swajangonski, whatever her name is. You know, she's Canadian with very difficult Scandinavian name, and she was extremely creative in music video world, you know. So that particular lens was popularized through music videos, and then gradually was used in the films. Dion Bibi, when he photographed a movie for Jane Campion called In the Cut, he used that lens. So it's a fun lens because you can literally focus on just one particular, you know, pimple or fly sitting on your nose, you know, and everything else will go out of focus, you know. And it's a very specific lens where you can set the lens through systems of bellows that the whole image is sharp or just a little portion, because literally what you do, you're twisting the lens. So if this is the
Okay.
you're twisting the lens so the perspective changes, so the film plan is changing, and it's boring. It does the job.
So as these dailies are silent, you can talk.
Now Panavision has a really nice device. You know, it will cost you $700 a day. It's that big. You have a computer. You can dial whatever you want. It will do it for you. You have to do digital for that because it photographs everything backwards. So you know, so they have a device that costs $10 million to develop, and then yeah. So I've used a little lens. You know, yeah, it was much faster and better.
Okay, can we have the...
And then there is another image of John Doe actually in bed, and I'm testing different lighting styles. How blue, where's the light, what is the color of the light, how much light, that kind of stuff. What is the color of the walls? So you see that in this little clip.
Okay. And the fact that it was made in France, did that that inhibit the release of the film in the States at all? I mean, it had very big critical success, that picture, but did it actually do any business?
It did, and actually made no money. You know, that's the sad part. You make a really good movie, and you spend too much money to make it, and the movie makes no money. Now, is that important? That the movie makes money? Sure, because you've got a fiscal responsibility, and also the money that it earns indicates the amount of viewers, you know, and you're making a movie for viewers, you know, you're not really making a movie just for your friends or for the, you know, very small group of people, you know. When you do that, make sure you make it for very little money. But when you make a movie for $10 million, it costs another 10 to promote. That's a lot of money, you know.
How much time did you have to prepare for that film?
Very little, because again, it was a small budget movie, so I think I've put 6 weeks of pre-production. And I was in France for that for 6 weeks. It was very liberating to work in France again, because I worked with the entire French crew. Everything was really small. There was one gaffer, 2 electricians, key grip, two grips, you know. The camera department was large because of the different cameras and different gizmos we were using, and we were using them really fast. So the camera department was rather large, but still 3 people in the camera department.
Wow.
Where, you know, just, you know, regular production, you would have gaffer and best boy and 7 electricians and then the entire prairie crew and stuff like that. So it's a different scope, you know. It's kind of liberating to make smaller movies if the stories are good, you know. It's very liberating.
Have you made smaller movies in the United States, independent pictures, actually shot in the States?
No, I don't think so.
No. Not the kind of thing that turns up at Sundance.
No. But, you know, the Sundance films are not really, you know, $5 to $10 million pictures, you know, with movie stars. So there's whole misconception of, you know, Sundance is independent world. No, it's not. You get movie stars directing movie stars, you know. I mean, it's, and you get distributors coming in.
Well, we actually have a clip from The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is
oh, right, I forgot about that one.
From the real film. And I don't know if you've had time to put it on up there. Do you have the last clip ready? If so, we could have it. Yeah, it's great.
It's almost like a horror movie.
It's so claustrophobic.
Yeah. Especially from this distance. Yeah. So no CGI, eh? It's all on camera, you know.
So we're going to
except the butterfly, that was a CGI, and you know, but other than that, it's all organic. Yeah.
Just before we open it up to questions from the audience, that reminds me that seeing that clip reminds me of my final question, which is you are recognized as a very experimental DP, and of all the innovations of the last 10, 15 years, which has been most useful to you? You've been referring rather snidely to digital revolution, I notice, but I mean, have there been cameras, have there been lenses, have there been innovations which have helped you as a cameraman?
Well, the innovation is the ability to move the camera, you know, the Technocrane, the Steadicam, now the whole cable systems, and there's a Mercedes-Benz with an arm, you know, it's called the Russian arm, which is basically a Mercedes SUV with a arm attached to the roof, and the arm can swivel around, you know, and you operate the camera from inside the Mercedes, and you can do amazing quick shots with that, you know. So just the ability to move the camera, that's the biggest invention, you know, and you can literally do any shots you want with cables and rigs, you know, and stuff like that, you know.
Right, well, the system, as you know, halfway through the campus by now, is that you please wait for a mic to reach you when I choose you from the audience, and then your voice will be heard and you'll be recorded. So anybody asking a question, I start down here.
So I've rehearsed, but you know, you also have a focus puller who speaks French, you know, and you sit right next to him, no, rack to his face, no, go to a shoe, go to, you know, that kind of stuff, you know. So we were hoping always to be, well, you know, on the top of the focus shift, I'm also playing with the camera speed. So when the camera is on the mouth, I'm at 24 frames. When the camera goes to the eye, very frequently I'm at 6 or 12 frames because I wanted that rapid eye movement on the speaker, you know. So I wanted the eye to move not on our guy, but whoever is talking to the camera. I wanted that kind of a weird twitching in the face, or whenever the camera was not pointing at the mouth, I would go off speed, you know. And sometimes there's another gizmo I would be using, which changes the shutter speed. So all of a sudden the image becomes very smeary. You know, that's me going from 180-degree shutter. Actually not. I'm throwing the shutter out of focus, so you get the image very smeared. So what happens is that the film stops at the gate, but the shutter still moves, is still moving. So it smears the image, you know. But you can dial it. You can go back to, you know, 180 to in phase, and you get a really nice sharp image, you know. So it was rehearsed, but also was kind of spontaneous, you know. Yeah. But you know, you always have the freedom in Diving Bell and a Butterfly that you have a common thread, which is the voiceover. So not to diminish the picture by any means, but if I have a great voiceover, I could shoot Peter's food again, and you know, for 30 seconds, and all of a sudden, with the great voiceover, kind of becomes a meaningful image, you know, to belittle the images, right? So yeah, it was rehearsed, and then occasionally it was spontaneous.
Question from the front row.
Kind of a classical question. There's a lot of young people in the hall, and some of them, maybe at least one of them, would like to be in your shoes, at least professionally. So you got nice shoes.
No, those are Australian shoes. They, you know, got them from my uncle.
And any suggestion, any, something you learn with your experience?
The suggestion is to, tell stories. If you have a video camera, do it with video camera. If you have a still camera, just give yourself a limit. Okay, I've got 15 frames, I want to tell a story. Whatever that story is, from the beginning to the middle to the end, And I think it has to be some kind of progression of this, just like you would write a script. You got the beginning, then you establish the characters, you build up the tension to the point, and then, you have to do that. You have to do that, and there's just no other way. You got to learn how to make traditional filmmaking, and just like if you play music, you got to learn how to play classical music before you go into free jazz. Julian Schnabel is an amazing painter. He can paint my portrait that looks like me. Same with Picasso. See where they end up being somewhere else with the art. Same with the filmmaking, particularly with cinematography. You got to learn the stuff that's part of your tools. You got to learn how to expose film and how to keep it in focus. To some degree, you almost succeeded if you got that. If you have an entire movie that's, you see everything and it's sharp, you're almost a cinematographer. But then you learn that there's more to it, right? And that was my experience. The very first time I saw the little 100 feet of film, whoa, there's an image. Look at that. Oh, it's soft. Gotta fix that part. Gotta make it sharp. Then the next time, oh, it's sharp. That's great. Now, the filter. I've put the filter. I cut out half an orange filter and I put it half, thinking it's gonna be great. The sky will be really orange. But then I panned, so everything fell apart. So you learn. You put a half filter. Don't pan, right? But primarily, it's the story. Again, the 15 frames or 6 frames or 25 frames. I want to tell a story, or just walk around with the camera and just take pictures. And then look at those pictures and try to analyze, why did I take the picture? Which picture you like and which one you don't? And try to understand what drives you to take particular image, What makes you to dress certain way in the morning, That tells us who you are, And then there are conditions, You're not going to go like that for a job interview in the bank, right? So there are certain conventions, social conventions you have to follow. Same with movies. You have to follow a certain convention when you make movie, It's very individual. And I think the biggest thing for a cinematographer is to have the ability to read the script. And I'm not talking about your ability to read English or whatever, but to read the script and find the story in it, and then digest the story through your own experience, to digest the story and project the images through your own experiences, because that's an art form. Now, if you keep it focused and bright and you can see everything, you're not a cinematographer. You just, you're a technician, But what happens when you go too bright, you just barely see the image, You probably will get fired, but you learn something really interesting. The image is really powerful when it's on that border, when it's just disappearing, or when it's so dark that you can't really see, but it's just, So you start looking for stories that allowed you to have those images, not just the sharp and bright images, But storytelling is very important.
One there, and then we'll go upstairs. Okay.
How much do you prepare by doing storyboards?
Where are you?
I'm here.
Okay, hi.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm thinking, how much do you prepare the shots before going on into production? I mean, storyboards, and are you involved in the storyboarding, and how much do you improvise the shots on set when doing, Schindler's List, for instance? Is there room and money to improvise?
Well, there's no storyboards on a movie like Schindler's List. There's storyboards on a movie like Jurassic Park, because you have to storyboard the action sequences, so everyone knows what we're doing, and you have to invent the technique to kind of achieve that. On a movies like Schindler's List, there's no storyboard. You rehearse the scene and you light and you do the coverage.
So how do you go about deciding what to shoot? I mean, and be on schedule and all that.
Well, in advance what the schedule is. So, for example, as I'm shooting the opening of Auschwitz, I probably have another crew pre-rigging the equipment in another location, right? We've had entire set built there, which consisted of barracks, So we had crew pre-rigging the barracks, So I know I know my step. I know what I'm going to do ahead of my work, and I've got people pre-rigging it, and in my spare time I will go and supervise that with my gaffer, So it's very essential to have a really great gaffer who can who can go and prepare stuff for you. But the main section of the pictures, for example, if you have a scene that takes place in the living room, there are windows. You know you have to have lights prepared for that. You know, so there are lights already sitting on the lifts, you know, ready to go, right? They may even be on. But then you rehearse the scene and you realize, wow, I don't want the sunlight. You know, let's pen that away. You know, let's put a heavy diffusion. So those decisions you make after you watch a rehearsal. You may have preconceived ideas of what the scene should be, but you also have to be open to changes, you know, because the instinct is really important, you know. Sometimes I would want to do something that's totally against what I would normally do, and I go and do it because it just instinctually feels right, you know.
So you don't have like a list of shots that you know you have to bring home?
No, you really don't, no. I mean, some directors do. Some directors do extensive storyboards and shot lists and all that stuff, you know. Others don't, you know. You probably should have that because you haven't developed that instinct yet, you know. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's been making movies for 35 years, right? That's Steven. I mean, he's been making movies for 35 years. And, you know, he likes the spontaneity of the set. That's where earlier when I was saying that the necessity of pace, you know, it's really great to keep that because you get the energy going and the instincts are working, you know, and you coming up with how to make the scene. You do understand, as a filmmaker, the essence of the scene. Steven understands what he wants to do dramatically, and I understand what I want to do through visuals, you know. You just form that decision, that exact decision, during the rehearsal or after the rehearsal, you know.
The question upstairs. Anybody upstairs? Yes, right in the middle. You got a microphone? Coming. Center stage there. And then there'll be a gentleman down there who is holding a mic, but first.
Hi. Hello.
Did you think about shooting Indiana Jones digital or one of your next movies?
No, I did not.
Why not? Why don't you like the?
Let's move another question. That's waste of time. I'm sorry. I don't want to belittle your question, but it's so not important to me. Whatever means you've got, make a movie. I'm just not interested in it.
Okay.
This gentleman in the fours in the back with the mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, have you worked with the red camera yet? And if yes, what do you think of it?
Moving on, another question. I will not talk about digital technology. You've got other people who do that. I'm not interested in it. So let's talk about organic filmmaking.
Okay. Another one, right up the back.
Everyone leaves now.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Minority Report. Sure. I think it's a very beautiful film, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the aesthetic decisions that were made there.
Well, again, it's a near future film. So you want to create aesthetics that are, you know, different from what we used to, but not too eccentric, so people cannot identify. So we wanted to go into gritty, kind of bluish. Although it's not a blue movie because there are many scenes full of color, but very gritty and full of grain and kind of. You know, you can touch the film almost, you know, shiny objects, you know, against dark walls, you know, that kind of stuff. And a lot of grain, you know. There was one particular scene where Tom Cruise's eye is being replaced, you know, and that was shot with a 800 ASA film emulsion, which is very grainy and very warm. I shot, not that the emulsion is warm, but I wanted to shoot it warm because it was such a kind of almost like burlesque scene with Peter Skarsgård there and his assistant. They both speaking in Swedish. They dancing. It's almost comedy, yet his eye is being replaced. So one way to do it, such a horrific scene, you would want to go blue. But it just felt wrong to go blue. So I went with heavy grain and orange color because it just felt like my recollections as a child of the puppet shows, you know. It was, you know, always a little bit dark and kind of, you know, scary and very warm because that's what the puppet shows are. They've got stage light and usually the walls are kind of reddish or bluish, you know, but warm. So that's one scene. Other stuff, you know, it's just what felt different than Blade Runner, but as good as Blade Runner.
Yeah, I was curious if you were sort of up against how to make this. It's reminiscent of Blade Runner, but yeah.
No, because I would never be able to do it. I mean, it's just the different people involved in the picture, and you know, why repeat something that was so great? You know, so you have to find your own kind of language. You know, plus Blade Runner was so much more in the future. You know, people had flying cars. You know, although they do have flying cars in Minority Report.
Well, at this campus last year, Alex McDowell gave a masterclass, and he brought over a DVD where he showed all of his designs for those films. And I guess that you must have worked closely with someone like that?
Well, Alex is an amazing production designer, but then again, that's one of those guys that sometimes, his work is more important than the rest of departments. So you had to be on Alex's butt and said, Alex, you build a set that I cannot light. We got kind of like, there's a camera, and we have to make a movie there. And he was very susceptible to that. He's also made an amazing set for Terminal, which is this, you had to ride bicycle to the set to get one from, it was a really difficult set, $8 million set, it was just, or maybe just the lighting was $8 million. Maybe he said it was 10. He built an existing functional airport terminal with staircase, functioning staircase, and I gained so much weight, I'm still trying to lose it because there was McDonald's and fried chicken, and you could eat as much, So he's great. Alex is great.
Another question? I have one there, right in the middle. A lady, yes, with her hand up in the middle of the...
Just jump in.
There she is, right there. Right, center.
Yeah, okay, we've got
10
two
to 12.
mics floating around.
Hi,
so
I
okay.
just wanted to know at what time in the process you start to collaborate with the production designer and the costume designer, and how much say does everyone have?
Depends on the caliber of production designer and costume designer, and very early. You want to do it very early again, because in terms of production designer, I photograph what he gives me to photograph, and the sooner I know what the sets are, the sooner I know what the color of the walls and paint and the type of a paint and lighting fixtures, and that's where we collaborate. Where's the window? What is the material on the window? No, I don't put shade, don't put shutters. I need a curtain. Give me a curtain. Paint the walls a little bit shiny because if there's a sconce, I want some of the sheen from the sconce on the wall. But the good production designers, they know that. The color. What is the color? Well, I'm thinking of doing certain scenes kind of blue, so don't go with the green walls because they will be even greener. That kind of stuff. So it's a very close collaboration. Same with costumes. But not as essential. Costumes are more important in terms of conveying the period. Catch Me If You Can, you get costumes that are, from 1960s, and you get 1960s cars, half of my job is done. I've created a look, because it's already there. It's already in front of the camera. Okay, 1960s. But it's really the production designer and the costume department. Now, I can only point the camera this way because right there, you got a ugly shopping mall. So how do you make this really interesting that with the confinements of, that's really hard to shoot 60s, very hard. It's much easier to do 30s and 1800s, but 60s are tough because people think, oh, you can go and shoot 60s on the streets, and well, you can't because, you've got very little of the 60s left, But so early, the earlier the better.
Okay. Thank you.
But also I work with really great people. Sometimes I see low-budget movies where it's like, okay, come on, do you really need this red door? I mean, come on. You don't need the red door. You don't need the red car in the background. You really don't need the red shoes or red jacket. I know you're a production designer. I know you're doing your job. Just be more subtle with it,
From the top balcony.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
You've got a microphone.
Hi.
I have a question.
Do it twice, do both of you at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to go, because I've been holding the microphone
Yes, go
for
ahead.
far too long. I was just, aside from your work with production designers, my hand is here, if you can see. But aside from your work with production designers, I was just wondering if you looked at other cinematographers or stills photographers in preparation for one of your films. I was just thinking, as particularly Robert Capa, for the kind of his amazing Normandy landing photography.
Well, I'm inspired by a lot of stuff, by all the type of visuals, and definitely Robert Kapp. That's just one tiny little part of the images, but you need that. You need inspiration, whatever that is, whether it's photo or I don't particularly find paintings very inspiring, but magazines, fashion magazines, the color of that face, the type of a light, I mean, that's to me more inspiring than the paintings, and when I flip through the magazines, I pull, stacks of research material. It's really funny when I met my wife, I was flying from somewhere and I had a couple of tearouts from the magazine, and she's looking at one and said, what's this? What do you like about this girl? Which girl are you talking about? This girl? No. On the other side, there was a fish in the tank. I like the fish, not the girl, So You've got resources everywhere, you know, whether it's, you just need this one element. For Schindler's List, there was a photographer named Roman Vishniak. He photographed Jewish settlements all over Eastern Europe, and I found his book, and that was a great inspiration, you know. But then again, stills are stills, they don't move, you know. Kappa, you know, as you know the history, it was kind of an accident, so he didn't really do it consciously. He had an image that was exposed by his assistant opening the doors to the darkroom, and there were many more frames, but only few frames survived, you know. So, lucky accident, yeah. There's no lucky accidents when you make a movie that's $100 million, you know. Lucky accident is when everything is in focus, you know. That's a lucky accident because when you're working with, you know, and you always have images out of focus, but most of the time you end up cutting them out, you know.
Janusz, right up here in the middle.
Hey.
Talking about exposure, do you always use a light meter?
Yes, I always use a light meter. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you know when you shoot outside at night and you're not lighting it, you know, you've got a 500 ASA emulsion, you set it at 2 because you know whatever you see at night, that's how it's going to come out. You know, I mean, you go in the city streets, if there's a light on the building at 2, 500 ASA, you're going to see it. If there's no light, there's no magic. You're not going to see it. That's it. You know. But now, you know, at 2, you also can get a lens at 1.4. You know, it's just you see everything. You know.
Another question.
Up here in the middle, right up here. Hi, Janusz. First of all, thank you for coming in and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Wave your hand because
I'm way up here, like all the way up.
Right up.
Middle. Second one. Here.
There you go. Oh, see, I was afraid to look up.
Yeah. I wanted to
It's
know.
a good Polish upbringing. Do not look up as you.
After you graduated from AFI, how hard was it for you to get into the union? And do you enjoy being in the union and working with union crews?
Well, I wanted to work, and was it hard? I think it was hard, but you know, once I made Schindler's List, I was in the union. You know, but prior to that, I've done enough independent work where there's enough.
Where you collected
there's
union hours
right,
on it.
exactly, the same process, you know. So by the time I did Schindler's List, I was just on the verge to have enough, on the verge to have enough hours to become a union member. You know?
Okay, and I have a second question, if possible. How much do you think about camera movement when you're preparing for a shoot, and how much does it get dictated maybe by when you work with Steven?
Well, Steven blacks, right? He blacks the movie through a camera, so you know that you have a close-up, but in that same shot, you will end up going to a wide shot, and that's always the hard part. You know, I love the, you know, Barry Lyndon, where it's just zoom in, zoom out, dolly left and right. You know, 1.4, do not move because you'll be out of focus. You know, but we move. You know, I mean, the camera starts here, and they will go all the way to you, and it's gotta look good. You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
Whatever the good means. You know, so, but that's, you know, I mean. Part of the director's job is to black the scene, visually speaking, black the scene and choose the camera angles. That's the job of the director. Some of them are interested in that, others are not. Steven is interested in that. Carmen Crowe was not interested in it. Yeah. I like both situations. Michael Bay works through camera, you know. He even designs the lighting, you know, and that's fine. That's what he wants to do, right? And it's fantastic. He makes really great, entertaining movies. And I like both aspects. I like blacking the scene, and I like letting the director black the scene. You know, depends on the relationship. You know.
Yeah, and the camera operator, how important is that position for you?
In America, it's a little bit. In America, they really operate the camera. They don't really have a creative input. You know, they pretty much. Operators, you know. In Europe, it's a little bit different. You've got the lighting director, lighting cameraman. So you get the lighting director, and you get a cameraman, and the cameraman sets up the shots with the director. That's not the system I work in. You know.
Well, we have time for one more question, I think, from the stalls.
I've been waiting.
I know. I'm sorry. But we only have an hour and a half. That's the trouble.
The reason why I'm asking, this is supposed to be a master class, so I would like to ask
Where are you?
Here, sorry.
Okay, good.
Here. Specific question. Let's say on a film on Munich, when you, from the start of reading the script and you taking the notes and then going through what kind of light am I going to use? What kind of lens am I going to use? What kind of, then later on with the locations, and then later on, can you maybe give us like a step through your system of thoughts and decisions and then testing so we can see your way of thinking through this process?
Sure.
That's a nice way of wrapping it up, isn't it?
Well, the nature of the movie is that there are many, many locations, many different countries. So you, as the cinematographer, you have to create different visual reference, not just reference, you have to create different visual for each of the locations. The movie was primarily shot in Malta. So in Malta, we had location for Athens, we had a location for Tel Aviv, we had location for Rome, we had location for Beirut. You know, all those different locations had to look different because of the, you know, associations with the particular country. So when I think of Tel Aviv, you know, never been to Tel Aviv, but water, right? A bright sun, you know, kind of warm, right? When I think of Athens, you know, I think kind of warm, you know, kind of orangish, yellow, you know. So there's this hotel right there in the movie with yellow lights that we blow up in the movie, right? One of the terrorists gets blown up in that hotel. So from very first scout, when I scouted the location, I saw this building and I want a yellow fluorescent. So, you know, I had the Prairie crew to install yellow fluorescents underneath the balcony. So there you go, there's one distinction right there. Then just 2 blocks away, we were in another hotel. That I wanted to be blue because it felt like it's gotta look different, right? So that's the scene where Ali confronts Eric, and they have a shootout on the street, and that was blue. Rome is warm, kind of also warm and Mediterranean. London rains, you know, that was shot in Budapest. Paris, you know, kind of on the bluish, the Truffaut movies, you know. It's very cliche way of me as the viewer perceives certain countries, certain colors. And you make that kind of distinction. Then you know it's going to be a lot of cars. So now I'm shooting into the mirror, through the glass. In the mirror, I've got glass in the back, and there's a guy who's going to point a gun. Do you know how freaking difficult that is? Oh my God. And then it's not just a mirror shot. You got foreground action where the poet is reciting, so you gotta see that guy, you know, and you're not in Rome, you are in Budapest, so if you pan the camera that way, you are in Budapest. You gotta come in your statue right there. So you're seeing the guy reciting. Then you got James Bond with a girl in the car sitting, you know. Then you got a mirror, they see another guy in the back. And so you lose 1.5 steps one way. You lose another step in half in the mirror. Then you got a glass, then that glass is green, that glass is white. Oh, it's, yeah. So that kind of stuff. So you have to realize, so how am I gonna do that, you know? So you know those things and you get prepared for that, you know? So you know that you have to bring lots of light for the guy behind you so you can light him bright enough so all the loss of light that you have to the glass does not make him dark. And in the car, you have to light the guy really bright as well because you don't want him to go dark, you know? So that kind of stuff. Then you know you're going to be in the cars, a lot of running, shooting people, you know? You are in an urban environment, particularly the Beirut sequence, the Beirut shootout. That's a huge, huge sequence, you know, and there are no lights, so every light you put in is your light, you know. And you're not in Hollywood, so you don't have the Damasco lights. You have to build your own stuff. So you have a gaffer who puts the stuff on the crane and lights it for you, you know. And maybe for the wide shot, for extremely wide shot, you wait until early morning, because usually you work night until morning. You wait for the early morning where you just have enough light in the sky so you can do a wide shot so you see a little bit of more light but doesn't feel like night yet, doesn't feel like day yet. So that kind of stuff, you know. It's a tough job. I mean, it's not always rewarding. Sometimes you go home and you don't sleep well. Most of the time, actually, if you don't sleep, you did a good job. You know, when you sleep, you just had a good job. You just did a job, but not necessarily a good job. You gotta have that, you know, you can't sleep. You can't wait to go to the lab in the morning. It's so exciting to go see the images, you know. So it's a very extensive process. And then you're working. We had 7 languages spoken on the set. We had Hungarians, we had Croatians, we had Poles, we had French, we had Maltese. They think they English, but the accent is really heavy. So you can, you know. You know. We had some people from Middle East. You know, the cast was from Middle East. You know, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences. I love making movies outside America. It just feels much more energetic and full of purpose. You know, and if you don't sleep in your own bed, no, I'm not putting down America. Hollywood is great. I love Hollywood. I love Hollywood. It's one of the best places in the world. It embraced me. You know, and all of you, whether you want to admit to not, you will want to make movie there one day, even those who are in no fucking way I will ever go make this commercial shit. You get older and you get that desire. It's a great place. It's truly the best place to make movies. It's just, when you sleep in your own bed, you become comfortable, and I don't like that comfort, you know. When you make a movie that's, 6 months production, you want to be on your bed. But when you make a movie like Minority Report or Schindler's List or Diving Bell and a Butterfly, it's good to feel focused on job, So when you stay in the hotel, you focus on job, because there's nothing else. I mean, I don't particularly, I don't drink. I drink a little bit, but I find bar scene and nightclubs kind of boring, So, I work, go to the lab, and work and sleep. Not very well.
Well, thank you,
Thank you,
Janusz, for coming to spend that valuable time with us. Thank you.